Welcome to What's Your Story, where we, Jaime Marco,
and Stan Brown,
delve into the extraordinary lives of everyday people.
Listen in as we uncover the unique tales that shape who we are,
one story at a time.
Hey, let's get ready to explore today's story.
Let's do it.
Well, Dad, we're in the same room today.
Well, I figured maybe a personal visit wouldn't be bad to make sure we appear on the same screen. Nice to see you.
Hi. Hello. You know, it's so interesting. I ran into somebody today. We have to look there, but I ran into somebody today who said that they have been listening to the podcast and they gave us great feedback and they were like, we love it. It's so fun to hear the two of you talk. It's so nice.
He's the one.
That's not true. We're actually amazing viewership. But she was saying, how far, where does your dad live or where does he live? I'm like, oh, he lives like 3 miles down the road.
This is all confidential information. This is more than you need to know.
And I said, well, why do you do it on Zoom? I'm like, well, it's just easier. Because if I was like looking at you this whole time, it would be kind of like weird that we're like looking at each other and not looking at
Not weird for me. It's okay.
You like to be looked at?
Who doesn't? Be truthful.
But no, and she was saying it's just like so cool. And then I got stopped because we have a billboard at a local area around here.
Does that cost us money?
Yeah.
Okay, just check.
So we put up a billboard about it and I got stopped at Publix. Like, do you do podcasts with your dad? I'm like, I do. So it's like super cool. Anyway.
Sounds good to me.
Yes. So today we are super lucky. We have a really awesome guest that you have met, actually, this guest.
I did.
You have. No, you have. So they are neighbors of ours, and I know his wife very well. I know him very well. We work together on different things. You've met them actually on Halloween before. They have come to our home for Halloween. They'll be coming again. Well, this is airing after Halloween, but they were at our house again this Halloween. And so, do you remember when we had the couple here that was Bob Ross and the painter?
Yeah, with the curly hair and the thing.
Yes. So I am super excited for us to talk with him because, it's really interesting. Every time that we do these podcasts, we meet people with different stories, different backgrounds. And I think when you're a little kid, you have a concept of like when you grow up, what you want to be. But there's just, you don't realize about how many choices.
Too many choices.
Yeah, like you don't even, it's like a Cheesecake Factory memory Cheesecake Factory choice.
I can't finish when those slices are so big, I can't even finish.
Oh my gosh, you always will go to food, won't you?
It's a default. Not my default. But also, wait, all kidding aside, when she filled me in on the background of this guy, it really is the man with the power.
What power?
The power of voodoo.
Who voodoo?
He do.
So listener, if you listen to the last few episodes, you realize that we've not really done a good job with that. But yeah, so I think his story is like so cool. And I mean, all the stories have been great. And I think that what we're learning is that everybody has a different path. Everybody has a different life. And it's just like amazing. So you realize that now you're an adult, that there's not like one job.
Yeah, but this guy's taking chances on things that normally were never available to most people, weren't available before. The question is, has he ever seen
a UFO?
Yes.
Ooh, he actually might have seen a UFO. But what I really also like about him is that it's, do you hear that thing going on? Do you hear that? So we have all those like sensor automated like funny things for the holidays, and it goes off in the middle of the day. So either there's like a ghost in my house or there's a lizard running in front. I'm not really sure, but it goes off, and it doesn't go off at all unless I'm home. It's really weird. Anyway, so what I really like about him is that I'm giving a talk, and the talk part of it is about activating parts of your life. And I really think that also activate could also be advocate. And what I think is really unique about what he's done is that he's created roles for himself because he's advocated for himself. So like where he got in his career, even from like proposing to his wife, like he put himself in the right position to get what he wants. And that's not always easy for everybody. But I think when you start to hear somebody else's story who's done that, I think it's pretty incredible.
Let's jump in. Come on, what's his first name?
David.
David. Come on, David.
Right,
jump on board. Can he zoom?
Yeah. Let's see. He's coming on in. He should be pretty good with tech because he's from a tech company.
There he is.
Hey.
Hello.
Are you? Oh, you're muted. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
I was sitting like that for 10 minutes. My cheeks are cramping. I'm just kidding.
How's the green room over there? A lot of vegetables for you, little snacks and stuff.
It's wonderful. It's really great. deluxe accommodations.
Well, you're in for a treat because normally we are not together. Normally we're both zooming in, but today, due to certain circumstances, we decided to be together. So I'm just
why is that a treat for him?
Oh, maybe it's not.
What's that?
He said, "Why is that a treat for you?" And I said, "Maybe it's not a treat for you. I don't
I
know."
love having you both in the same window.
Oh,
thank
thanks.
you.
Well, everyone, meet David Havasi, who is our guest today. And he is not only our guest, but he's also a good friend of mine. I love the pose.
He's saying something up there.
Well, if you're listening, you can't see how amazing this is. So head on over to YouTube and check out the video as well, too. So happy to have you. So we're going to start with two things to get started and kicked off. But here's my first question. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being that today is a day where you should not be interacting with others, like you're just not in the right headspace for that, which, just so you know, listener, I don't think he even comes close to this ever. Or to a 10 being it's your best day ever, not a worry in the world, and like living your best life.
What a gamut.
What is your number today?
Well, I'm a pretty odd person because I don't want to sound cheesy. I really, really don't, or disingenuous. But I mean, 10?
David, that's pretty disingenuous.
Yeah, exactly.
But I
the interview.
Live that way.
This is bullpucky.
Yeah. But you really do live that way.
Oil.
But honestly, like you do live that way. Like I know you personally and your energy does just come off like that. And we're going to talk about where that comes from because we want to be able to get other people to channel that. Do you want to ask your question?
You have to start out right away. David, most people, if you've ever seen a UFO in your life, or if anyone near you has ever seen one, it's an experience that kind of not just resonates with you, but stays with you in your psyche, whether you can answer the question or not. So the question today is, David, have you or anyone you know ever seen a UFO or a UAP, as they say today?
You know what? I do have a UFO sighting story. I actually have 2.
Oh, I told you.
It makes sense if people didn't have any at all.
Yeah. They're totally random. One was I was in college. It's totally random, and it's this like totally random moment. But I was in college and we were going to a Denny's. You know, Denny's?
Probably nighttime.
And we were like 4 college students. So we were going there at like midnight to just sit around and like buy a cup of coffee and then just sit there for hours and take up space and breathe perfectly good air inside of Denny's. And
yeah, because that's when they keep smoking in Denny's.
It was, yeah. And we were in the back parking lot and it was very arbitrary night, just any other night. And we were getting out. It was me, my friend Mike, my friend Matt from college. And we, drove from the dorms over there. And we were walking into the restaurant. And this moment happened only for a second. But there was something in the sky. And this was before drones and stuff. Drones can do all these crazy moves.
Yeah, but this was like late 1900s.
It would have been like late mid to late 1900s. Yeah, that's right. So the gas lamps were lit and the carriages were going by. No, but all of a sudden there's something in the sky, but really high in the sky over the Denny's, kind of walking, and then it did this like J shape, like in a path like a J, and then just shot up. Boom.
What color was it?
Really?
I don't recall.
But you all saw it?
What's that? We all saw it, and we just were like,
Well, okay, let me ask you. You would know. There was no Starlink or anything back then in like 98, was there?
No.
Yeah, nothing like that. Okay.
No, I mean, I'm not saying it was an alien or something, but that's what we saw, and it was really weird. And then it was this moment that came and went. We were just like, what the heck was that? I'm like, I don't know. And they were like, cool, I think I'll get a moons over Miami. We're talking about what we're going to eat.
It wasn't discussed later that night or probably ever again. It was finished. It was done. That was it.
Boom. That was it. That was the moment. It was a second and it was gone and it was just weird and I have no way to explain it. Another time, jumping back a couple more years, I was in high school and I got home late at night. I was hanging out with some friends and I got home And my dad, my dad was an engineer, and he had this. What's that?
We know now.
Oh yeah. He is. If you didn't know, then nobody knew. But and he had this promo video for new cars, actually the Plymouth Prowler, which is a really cool car back then. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna watch it. It was like B-roll of this thing, and I actually fell asleep on the couch watching it. And, it was a VHS tape, so when it got to the end, everything just like turned off.
Yeah.
And everybody had gone to sleep. Now this time it was just my parents, my brothers were older and they had moved out. And so there were no lights on in the house. And my childhood home is built into a side of a hill. So it's a ranch, but the back side of the house is actually like a second floor.
Sure.
Because it's built in, the front is like a ranch, but the back actually looks like a 2-story home. So the back side of the house is actually a deck that goes down a floor. So I was like 2 stories up if you're looking at the back of the house. So there's no way like no car headlights could shine in or anything like that. Because it was above, street level, and there's nothing behind them. There's a house back there, but there are trees in between and stuff like that. So I wake up and it was like a helicopter, and the blinds were drawn, mind you, and the whole back of the house is all like sliding doors, glass sliding doors, but they had these vertical blinds. It was like a helicopter that had like searchlights.
Really?
We're beaming through my brace fell. We're beaming through the doors, and it lit up the entire house. And
was the noise also?
No, it's completely silent. And I swear, my mind was, this is like a UFO. And this all happens in seconds. So I get up, I see it, and I thought, my first thing was, well, I have to wake up my parents so they could see this too. So no one thinks I'm crazy. Now, mind you, all this is happening in a matter of a second. I like get up off the couch. Now it's a ranch. So all the rooms are it's like the living room, the dining room, then there's like a foyer, then there's some like half steps into the hallway, but it's kind of these almost like parlor type, almost like gallery type, how the way the house is set up. So there's like archways connecting the rooms going laterally across the house. And so the light was kind of filling up the whole house going down the way. But still, there was that light and there was nothing else. Everything else was dark. So I jump out of the couch and I sprint across the house shouting for my parents. Now they lived on their room was in the far end of the house, and there's like double doors going into their bedroom. So I was sprinting across the house, and I was so distracted and so kind of looking at this that I ran full speed into the wall, like boom, like, there's the archway. Yeah. I didn't call it correctly, and I hit one side of it, like bam, and it just was like how it would feel running full speed into a wall. And I was so shocked, but then I was like stunned, and I kept running, and I was shouting for my parents.
What were you shouting?
I was saying, "Mom, Dad, wake up! Mom, Dad, wake up!" Like the top of my lungs. I get to their door, and I bang on the door, and they like, my dad's, what? And then there was nothing there. There was no light, and I was like, Dad,
wow,
talk outside. And he's like, well, I don't know, I don't see anything. Now we have floodlights in our back of the house, and their motion detector, floodlights or whatever. And like deer, because we lived kind of in a heavy forest area just north of Detroit. And so deer would always come onto the property, and it would always trigger the floodlights. But I knew what that was, and the floodlights shot away from the house. This felt like headlights, like somebody parked a car on the deck and then turned on the brights.
And now you have siblings, so they slept through this. They weren't there. They didn't experience.
They're older, so they were no longer living there.
Okay.
So it was just me at that time. Wow. So anyway, those are my UFO stories. I don't know.
So, I mean, are you real? Like, are you AI? I know you're like super into technology, and we'll talk about Tesla in a minute, but like, are you real?
Well, technically, we're probably all part of a simulation, and that's a conversation.
But David, the third time they come to visit, a little probing could happen.
Yeah. Well, I just had my colonoscopy, so I am ready.
That's the first.
And they were very gentle. And
Oh
but
my gosh.
it's not my first rodeo, is what I'm saying.
Best nap you can have.
Just give me some prep. I just give me the prep juice beforehand, and give me 24 hours
Well,
to prep.
so far you're the reigning king of UFO stories right here on What's Your Story. So let's see if we can maintain that, or maybe we can surpass it. Who knows? Excellent stories.
I'm a real winner.
So, I mean, it's so interesting. So I feel like your story has so many different dimensions, and that's why I wanted to have you as a guest. And just, I think it's incredible. So you're in high school, you're living in Detroit, you are seeing UFOs. What did you decide to do like from that point forward after this experience? But like tell us a little bit about
UFOs that set the course for my whole,
yeah. But like where do you think we can start with, even where do you think that this like 10 level of energy comes from for you? Like the fact that you're 10 today, where does that innately come from that you can be in that mindset?
Well, if we go back, I really credit my parents, and I don't think they did this consciously. It's not like it wasn't like an indoctrination or something like that. But as far as that principle, at a very young age, like the beginning of high school, my my mom suggested I listen to and you've probably heard of him, Zig Ziglar. Well, great. I mean, just such a phenomenal. He's for people who don't know, he's this kind of legendary motivational speaker. He really kind of some would say the godfather of modern motivation, and I'd listen to him on cassette tape while I did my homework. And he would just have these kind of mantras and these points of view, like never judge the day by the weather.
I love that.
Because I love that. It's not, rain's not bad. Rain feeds the earth. It's our idea of rain that's is bad. Snow's not bad. Snow, you could do a lot of fun stuff with snow. But it's our idea of it. So that was kind of the foundation. As I got older, particularly when I got into college, and particularly from my junior and senior year, I took a intro to world religion and a couple of philosophy courses, and then I really started getting into Eastern philosophy and the idea of like Zen Buddhism, of taking every moment as kind of a microverse of your whole life, and then you extrapolate that. And even Zig said this too, and these are kind of golden rules. Like a second is a miniature minute, is a miniature hour, is a miniature day, is a miniature week, is a miniature month, is a miniature year, is a miniature lifetime. So you can aggregate these things. So I think that's the root of it, and then just me kind of meditating on those concepts constantly. I think and we can get into, for people that don't know me, don't know, I was an actor for 15 years, actively, in New York City. The great thing about that profession, at least people who are any good, is it's all about exploring why people do things, what motivates them. And so you spend a lot of time thinking about that, probably a lot more than the average person does. And another thing is, in between shows, when you're on fun employment, you sit around thinking about this stuff and talking about it with your colleagues. Like, what motivates people? Why are people the way they are? And so I think it's just something I default to. I just give it a lot of thought. When I have downtime, I just kind of meditate on that. So I think that's kind of the root of it.
I love that. Now, you mentioned the acting side of it, and I never would have thought that actors would have thought of it like that, like what motivates them. But I think there's a big piece, because people go to watch their favorite musician, their favorite actor, their favorite comedian, their favorite TV show, because they want to feel something different than what they're feeling, right? Or they want to go to it for an escape, or they want to be inspired, or whatever it is. And for 15 years of doing that, you were on Broadway and did a bunch of different shows. So what did you learn most about what motivates people? Like, what did you learn as all those conversations? What were some highlights that you learned of what people are motivated by?
Well, I think the well, definitely. Well, what you learn a lot in show business in general is um that it's a journey, not a destination, and it's also it's a it's full of what people would call rejection, where you can, I'd have to audition 100 times, maybe more, to get one gig. And I'd be auditioning 3-4 times a week, and you'd spend hours preparing, and then you'd go into the room, and it'd be an intern eating a sandwich, and they never look up, and you're spilling your guts, and they're like, "Cool, thanks," and you're so excited for it, and then that's what it was. But to answer, and then there, of course, sprinkled in between there were these glorious kind of core memory, amazing moments where you have this amazing opportunity. But to answer your question, and we all know these things, people are motivated by love, greed, fear. They everybody, well, what you learn is everybody wants every scene. When you approach a scene, the core thing is motivation. What does this person want at the end of it? And that's kind of acting 101, like Lee Strasberg. If you go to school for it, that's what you learn with when you do a screen break. Everybody wants something, and apart from well, even like characters that are sociopathic or something like that, like there's this sense of love. Have that be lack of love, where maybe that's why they're acting the way they are, or a lack of love that's what they're in search for and they feel they don't have, or they're doing it for love. They're driven by this love for a cause or a person, and that it actually helps you learn lines, because if the show is written well and you're trying to memorize it, what the person says next, if you truly understand what motivates them and take that on as yourself, kind of use your experiences to reach that, the lines come very easy, because you're like, well, a person motivated for this in this situation in this time would probably say this next. And if it's written well, that's exactly what the person says. So but anyway, with every role, it gives you this chance to dive into why people are doing the things they're doing, and then also being living in New York and be able to see your peers doing great work. You go, wow, like I never even thought about it like that. Like you'll see, like Death of a Salesman or Our Town, like Arthur Miller, these like amazing shows, August Osage County, Iceman Cometh, just like incredible. And you think you understand it. You maybe you've read it in college, or maybe you've done a production of it, and then you see them, and you're like, I never even thought about it. It's the same words. They didn't change the words, but it's what they brought to it. And you're like, oh my gosh, that just like took it to a whole other place.
Hey, but have you found that a lot of actors, my limited experience, are kind of in and of themselves, they're kind of melancholy, they're kind of introverted, but they come to life and they live through their roles? Because when they're off the stage, there's really not much to talk about.
Yeah, that is a thing where there's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde, where they use it as almost therapeutic or a cathartic thing. What's really interesting is my wife Liz, who you know. She, when you see her on stage, you wouldn't know she's actually quite stoic in person, and she actually ironically doesn't seek attention. I'm the complete opposite in my life. I can't get enough of it, but Liz is not that way. But when you see her on stage, depending upon the role, but just inherently, she's in front of dozens of people, if not hundreds of people, sometimes thousands, and depending upon the venue. She's not stoic in that moment. She's pulling upon what the truth is of what is being presented. So there are these kind of different character types that that you definitely see in actors, where there's almost a Jekyll and Hyde, where they're kind of stoic in life, but
It's
then
being an artist, a true artist.
How did you get from Detroit to New York? Like, was that like you graduated college and you were like, I'm going to go be an actor in New York? Like, what was that transition like to go from graduating and going into being an actor?
Yeah.
Could you sing? Could you dance?
Does it all?
Well, I'm a hack of all of them. But yeah, basically how that happened was I was going to Oakland University, which is this great university actually in outside of Detroit, and I was studying theater there. And I figured after I graduated, I would make the move to New York. And I was in the parking lot. I think it was a grocery store. I forget the business, but I bumped into a mother of a friend of mine, Ryan Kasperzak. I bumped into his mother, Barb Kasperzak, and he was 2 years younger than me and 2 years behind, in school. And she basically gave me the sales pitch. She's like, he's going to Marymount, which is a small private college in New York City. Marymount, coincidentally, is now being renamed to Northeastern University, I think, as of next year. But for Marymount, for the sake of the story. And she gave me this sales pitch about, you could go to New York and Ryan will be there and just transfer, and the city is your campus and you belong there. And so like you got it. And she by the end of our conversation, she had completely sold me on it. So I went home, and back then my summers in that time of my life, so I was I would have been a freshman a junior, a sophomore in college. And I would spend my summers in Los Angeles dancing and auditioning. So when school was over, I'd go to LA. In high school, I was dancing. I danced at the American Gardens Theater in Epcot. But in college, I'd go to LA. And like last senior year of high school and in college. And then so my mom and I went to LA for like 2 or 3 months. And while I was there for the summer, and while I was there, I was interviewing at Marymount. And the main recruiter, his name's Bill Bordeaux. He's since passed away, but he's a great guy. He's also a University of Michigan alumni, which my father is. My dad did his undergrad and graduate studies there. And so we kind of had that Wolverine camaraderie, both Michiganders. And he said, well, what you can do is we'll get you into the school as a general study, so an undeclared major. The acting program, the acceptability rate in the acting program was only 1 out of 10. So one person out of 10. You can audition for the program first semester, and then hopefully second semester you could join the program as a major. So that's how that started. And I went to Marymount. I did my first show there before I was an acting major, because anyone could audition. And so it was Love's Labor's Lost, which is a great Shakespeare comedy. And then the audition process there was interesting. They totally did that kind of like Top Gun thing, where they like sat everybody in a room and they said, there's 20 of you in this room, 2 of you are going to make it. Which is a crazy feeling, because then you go,
gorgeous instructor walk in at that time as well too.
What's that?
Is that when he walks in? Isn't that when he sees her for the first time? When Tom Cruise sees like that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, the guy, the shaved head. Yeah, and then they told us that our egos were writing checks that our bodies couldn't cash, and I was like, this is just plagiarism at this point. No, but it was totally that. And
was that true? I mean, like now looking back and looking at the class you were in, was it that little percentage of people that succeeded?
Only 2 went through?
It is true. A big crowd of the people that were there, I never saw them again.
You were one of the 2.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's so interesting is they had, you had to like sing, do a monologue, and that was it, because the acting program and the dance program were actually separate at that time. They have since merged, but the dance was just like for hardcore dancers, which I didn't go in for, because those are like Elvin Ailey. Those are people that want to do like just dance, and that's what the program was back then.
A couple of lines of that monologue, just a little sample here.
Yeah, I think I did. I think I did Shylock from Merchant. It was the Pound of Flesh monologue from Merchant of Venice. I have not retained it, but it was great. It knocked him dead.
But you
But
did some really, I mean, like how many shows have you done in your time in the fit? Like how many shows?
I don't know, a few dozen over time. I mean,
That's a lot though, like to memorize the lines, and you've done some really big ones. You've been on stage with some big name actors as well
Give us the
too.
names of shows of actors. Entice us.
I love name dropping. I'm so glad you asked. Um, my first big one was in the fall of 2003, and I was doing a music theater workshop in New York, and this casting director, Dunya Vitolik, and she's a casting director for one of the biggest Broadway casting houses, Tara Rubin Casting. She after class, she's like, David, can you stick around after class? I was like, sure. She goes, you know what? They're looking for a replacement in the LA cast of The Producers,
Hello.
a Mel Brooks musical. And that was Producers was the most Tony Award winning show in Broadway history at that time. It was like the big thing going on. And they'd start an LA cast, and it was starring Martin Short as Leo Bloom and Jason Alexander as Max Bialystock. And Jason Alexander, for those who don't, he's George Costanza from Seinfeld and stuff like that. So
Short
they
needs
said
no introduction. I mean, Martin Short is Martin Short.
Martin Short is Martin Short.
Yeah. Father of the Bride, the most recent murder. What is it?
Only Murders in the Building. Yeah, so he's done a ton of stuff, SNL and tons of movies and all that stuff. So, and they said, and so we're looking for a featured ensemble member and Martin's understudy. There's a guy who's leaving to do another show, and that guy, who's now a dear friend of mine, Patrick Wetzel, he was transferring out, and so they're looking for a replacement. So the long story short, she's like, I think you'd be great for it. I've set a date if you're interested to meet with the creative team, and then we'll do a study session beforehand. So I actually met with Dunya, and there's an accompanist, and we went over the music and we went over the scenes that I would have to, you basically have a couple pages of dialogue, and you audition the scenes, and she would coach me like, this is kind of the vibe they're looking for, and yada yada yada.
Did Mel Brooks have to approve anybody? Or no.
Mel Brooks was not. I met Mel because I actually ended up shooting a couple days on the film of the musical in 2005, and he was on the set for that. But even that, Dunya called me. I remember, just to fast forward a little bit. Fast forward 18 months, I'm doing the first national tour of The Producers, and I was actually on my way with the show on my way to Grand Rapids, Michigan. That was one of our stops for the show. And Dunya calls on my cell phone. Coincidentally, it's the same person. And she's like, yeah, they're making a movie, The Producers. I was like, yeah. Of course, it was like the talk of the cast, because they were like, oh, will they ask anyone to do it?
I had no idea.
I assumed I would not do it, because why would I do a movie? So I just wasn't in that world too much. And she's like, yeah, well, we're basically making it like a video yearbook. We're just taking all the people from the different casts, and it's going to kind of this love letter of the show, and we want to have people kind of pop up in all the different scenes. She's like, so do you want to do the accounting scene? And the accounting scene is it was cool. Like it was John Lovitz was in it, and then of course Matthew Broderick was reprising his role as Leo, and then I'm one of the accountants, like, in the scene with them and stuff. And so that was that, which was really cool. So to answer your question, brevity is not one of my strengths, as you can tell. That was my first one. And then Spamlot was another one where actually right after that I did Hello Dolly with Michelle Lee from I think she's from Knots Landing or something. She's a big television actress, but she played Dolly. She played the title role. And Leroy Reams, who was our Roger Debris in Producers. Producers the first national wrapped in Pittsburgh. This was a crazy time. It wrapped in Pittsburgh. Liz was singing on a cruise ship. So in the last leg of the Producers tour, last several months, it was 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So basically I had a week off every month. And so Liz's contract was 6 months on the ship. So I would fly for whoever was in the country to Port Everglades, on Royal Caribbean where my wife was singing. And I'd spend a week on the cruise ship and then I'd join the tour. And then when my tour ended in Pittsburgh, I had about 7 weeks until principal shooting for the producer's movie. And then Liz had 6 weeks left on the ship. So it kind of lined up. So I went home to New York and I slept on the couch of my old apartment because I'd sublet it to somebody else. And then I jumped on the ship. I think it was for the last 5 weeks of Liz's contract. I was just a stowaway on the ship. And then I gained like 15 pounds. It was crazy because all the but and then I did principal photography with that. But then right after that, Leroy Reams, who I did producers with, was like, "Hey, I'm directing a production of Hello Dolly. It's like a mini tour. It'll open in Kansas City, and then I think it did Memphis, and then the Bass, which is in Dallas Fort Worth, and it was like a few months, and then." As that happened, Liz got cast in the first national in the 35th or 35th anniversary tour of Annie, and she was going to be in San Francisco for a few months, and so I finished in Fort Worth, and I flew to San Francisco and stayed with Liz for a while when she was in San Francisco. So working with Michelle Lee was really cool because she's definitely this kind of diva. Last name drop.
Do you have like any of them on speed dial? Like, can you like call Martin Short today and be like, "Hey, love you in Murders in the Building"?
Yeah, I don't think I have Jason's number. I don't think I have Marty's number. But I've like but and then Spamalot was really cool. That was another kind of cosmic thing. They're like, "Hey, same thing. Spamalot first national tour. They're looking for a replacement. It's already like a couple years into the run." And first national tours are Broadway contracts. So it's the same creative team, same production team, same casting. And they swap from Broadway to the tour. People kind of bounce around. It's the same company, same paychecks that they're signing and everything. So they said, yeah, the late, great Gary Beach is the king. He's playing King Arthur in Spamalot, Monty Python's Spamalot. Gary Beach was also, I knew from the producer's family. He won the Tony for his role as Roger Debris, and he played he reprised the role in the film. He played Roger Debris in the film. So I highly recommend, if you're not seeing it, he is a force. He's an absolute legend. He passed away recently as well. But he was our king. So I was like, oh my God, that's like so amazing. So I went out there. Also worth noting, another after Martin Short was Leo, Alan Ruck was Leo. So Alan Ruck was Cameron in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yeah,
He's done a ton of stuff. Spin City, Secession on HBO.
love him.
He's
then,
amazing.
So listen, 15 years is a long time in the theater business. I know that Liz is still doing it. What made you stop?
Big U-turn.
Yeah, basically. It was like a combination of things. Being a dancer, because kind of my bread and butter was I could dance and then also understudy principal roles. So I was just good enough at all those different things that was my niche. And there's definitely a need for that. You need somebody that could really dance, but then you needed somebody that could really fill that role when that person wasn't there.
So you can dance.
I could dance well. I think
you can dance if you want to.
Yeah. I could dance well enough for the stuff they needed. So yeah, and those dance auditions are interesting too. It's kind of like what you see on Chorus Line. Like for producers, Warren Carlyle, who ran the auditions, he was Susan Stroman's kind of right hand, and he was running the dance part of the audition for the producers. And it was this very chorus liney, like you would see a chorus line where they line everybody up, and then he goes down the line and he calls people forward and he asks you, do a triple pirouette on the left and to the left, which most most people do pirouettes to the right. So left is hard. It's like a right-hander writing with their left hand. It's that much harder than it would otherwise be. And you'd see people fall down, or you'd see people fall out of it. And Warren's an awesome guy, but he'd do this thing, and it was involuntary. We'd go, if somebody messed up, he's this British guy. He'd go, trouble, trouble, trouble. It's almost like a Tourette's. You go, trouble, trouble, trouble.
Oh my God, I'm gonna start doing that in my life. I'll be like, trouble, trouble.
Yeah. How far down the line were you in that interview process?
I don't remember, but
and more importantly, did you hear the trouble?
But I stopped. Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you're in the room, you can hear a pin drop, and everyone's worried about themselves because they don't want to be the person that messes up. And that's the thing about auditions too that are so funny. And this is kind of a metaphor for life. Everyone thinks everyone's watching them, and everyone's watching themselves. Everyone's worried about themselves, and so I just wanted to stick that triple pirouette, and it was the best triple pirouette to the left that I've ever done in my life. And it was kind of just like this glorious moment of like, wow, if I ever needed to do it, this was the moment to do it.
Any comment from him? What's that? Any comments from him?
No, I think that's what he expected. So it was kind of like, cool, no trouble. So I didn't get in trouble. So that was the comment, I guess. Yeah, so that was cool. And then I'll do a couple more name drops and then I'll shut up. Spamalot, our next king was Richard Chamberlain, which was awesome. So screen and stage legend Richard Chamberlain, the original Shogun. And the original Jason Bourne. But he is amazing. He celebrated his 75th birthday on tour with us, and he's just an amazing man. He almost officiated Liz and I's a wedding.
No way.
He has a house in Hawaii, and we were gonna do it on the beach at his house. But we ultimately did in New York, and Liz's brother officiated it. But he's just a sweet, sweet guy. And then after Richard left, John O'Hurley took over. And John O'Hurley was Jay Peterman in Seinfeld. And he also hosted Family Feud for a while. And he was the first winner of Dancing with the Stars. Fun fact.
Ooh, fun fact.
I think it was like a tie, but then they did tiebreaker, and he says he won. And I think it's on record that he won, so I'm going to give it to him. But,
I met Len Goodman in the airport one time, and I like freaked out.
You're a Len Goodman.
Yeah, we were like on this shuttle. We had to get on a shuttle from one plane to the next. We were going from, I might have been going to Hawaii, and I flew from somewhere to LA and then LA to Hawaii, and he was also on the shuttle with me. And I'm looking at him, and I was my friend. I'm like, that's Len Goodman. He's like, no, it's not. I'm like, that's Len Goodman. No, I'm like, yes, it is from Dancing with the Stars. And I go, are you? And I think he's passed. I think right?
He did recently. I mean, in the last couple of years, yeah.
And I go, are you Len Goodman? He goes, I am.
Oh, yeah.
I have this thing where I have to ask people if they know who they are. Like, are you so-and-so? And like, I know it's them, but anyway. Yeah. So he's, yeah.
It could be a doppelganger.
It could be AI. But that's so cool. So let's get back. So that's such an incredible career. So why like switch to something else? Like, where'd that go?
Well, so basically it was basically these two kind of headwinds converging. One is I was trying to skate to where the puck is going, I mean, as Wayne Gretzky says. So it's like, just like a professional tennis player or any athlete, it's like, well, I can't be jumping off of boxes and doing knee slides forever, So I had to figure out, like, what was I going to do after dance? So that was one element of it. Two, it's a very nomadic lifestyle. You like live out of suitcases and you go to where the job is. I think that's the thing that people don't understand. Even screen actors, they're never home. Like the movie and TV show doesn't shoot in your town. It's like in Vancouver or so you're always not home. So it's this kind of cats in a cradle thing where if you have kids, you never see them. And when you're on tour, I've heard so many stories of people being on tour and they watch their kid's second birthday, on a video call when they're in, the Buell Theater in Colorado, and you hear stories like that all the time. And that's just the business. That's what it is. And I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted from a parenting perspective. And so that was a thing too, you know, to become a little bit more domesticated. The third piece of the puzzle was actually two more pieces. One was I'm a huge car guy. My dad was an engineer, an executive at one of the big three for 37 years. And I was raised in that environment. Where I lived, somebody in everybody's family worked for one of the big three. And it was just kind of that's what you talked about at dinner. And it's just kind of ubiquitous. Everywhere you went, it was about cars. And so it was kind of in my blood. I didn't have an engineering bone in my body. I was not good at math or anything like that, but I just really loved cars. I loved design. I loved the passion behind the design and how they made you feel and their connectivity to them. Because I think connectivity in all parts of life, that's the whole other topic, is so important. And I love the symbiotic connection of a human being to a car when they're using it. So that was that. And the last piece was I fancy myself an environmentalist, and I saw there was there's geopolitical things where there were a lot of conflicts around the planet because of access to oil. The straw that really broke the camel's back was the Deepwater Horizon oil spill in the Gulf. That was really the catalyst where I said, I have to actually do something about it. Because I always thought, well, as a consumer, I'll just make responsible choices. And that will be my way of doing it. But I think the Deepwater Horizon, matter of fact, I know that was the catalyst where I said, I can no longer, I can't ask people to consider these things. I have to drag them and pull them in.
To lead by example, sure.
Correct. Yeah. And I had to actually offer them a solution instead of a philosophical hypothetical thing. So it turns out at that time, there's this little company called Tesla, which I had been following since its very early years in 07 and 08. Even before then, pre-Tesla, there was a company called AC Propulsion, which made a car called the T0, which would ultimately influence the original Tesla Roadster. And so I was watching this development. I was like, oh, cool. People are making electric cars. That'll be cool. But when the Deep Horizon oil rig or whatever spilled, that's when I reached out to Tesla. I just felt very, very moved to do that. And I basically told them, I am not an engineer. I am not a car salesman. I have no inclination to be either one of those things.
Really built yourself up, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. I am completely worthless. What can I do? What space can I take up here?
You're an empty slate. They love it. An empty slate. It's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. How can I get in the way? How can I impede progress? No, but so basically, what I did is I data mined everybody, everyone I could in the company. That's a very elegant way of saying cyber stalking. And I looked to see who made what decisions, what I had in common with these people, and who I think I could jive with. So this guy named Rick Avalos, he lived in the Bay Area, San Francisco. He played in a jam band. He was a big Monty Python fan. And so I was like, wow, this guy would probably really get me. So I cold contacted him. I sent him a message on Facebook. I said, my name's, David Havasi. Here's my background. I'd really love to bring what I do, which is take narrative, take story, and apply it to a product and to make it accessible to people. Here it is. I hope to hear from you. And I never thought I'd hear from him. He writes me right back, hey, do you have time to talk? I was like, oh, sure. And so we talked for about 45 minutes or an hour, completely hit it off. And then he's like, we have to talk to Arnang Gashuru, who was at the time the head of global talent acquisition at Tesla. And he was this kind of all-star in Silicon Valley. He took Google from 2,000 people to 20,000 people in 3 years. So he is this he knew how to cultivate and find talent and do all these things. So I hit it off with Arnand the next day on a call. And then they're like, cool, can you be in Palo Alto on Monday? And this is Friday. Well, I'd lived in New York for 15 years. My driver's license expired because I don't have to drive. And the DMV in New York is a zoo. So I take a cab and subway everywhere. So I'm like, why would I need a car? So I had a Michigan driver's license that expired. I flew back. I took a stun run to Michigan just to go to the DMV to renew my license, just so I could rent a car at SFO, so I could fundamentally just get around San Francisco, because there wasn't Uber at this point, and public transit in San Francisco is terrible.
Yeah.
Since Uber, it's all been solved, but the trolleys, and that's basically it. No stink. This is just a tourist thing. So so anyway, I flew out, and Rick was like, they never do this. Like, they never fly somebody out. This is like great. And you'll meet with the team and all this stuff. He's like, I'll introduce you to everybody, and then we'll go have lunch. It'll be great. So I'm like, all right.
David, they pay for your flight out?
Yeah, they pay my flight, my hotel, the car. It was great. So it was a huge expense to them. And I was like, wow, this is cool. This
your team at that point? How many team members would you say globally?
Tesla at that time had about 1,000 employees.
Okay.
Did they ever say pirouette to the left?
They did. If they did, I was ready.
Once again, this proves the universal axiom: what's the most important thing in life and comedy?
Timing. So you fly out there, and then you get, like, what job do you get? Like, what happens?
Well, it was one of the worst interviews you could possibly imagine. I made a complete fool of myself. I got Rick, the guy who's kind of my liaison. Tragically, his dad had passed away during that time. Like, that weekend, his dad passed away, so he has to fly back to Texas, his hometown, and because of that. And so I go in there solo
with no advocate. Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. And first of all, I'm dressed in a suit, and I walk in there, and everybody's like in flannels and Birkenstocks. So I'm like I look like a Poindexter. I'm like way overdressed. People are all like Silicon Valley, like they're all cool, and so I'm way overdressed. I look like a car salesman, and in a bad way, and they put me in this conference room, and it was basically this parade of HR and recruiting, and a couple executives that are the head of North America sales, and the start of every conversation, I would say, did you have an opportunity to speak with Rick about me? And every one of them were like, no. So I started cold with every person. And of course they're like, so tell me about yourself. And I was like, well, I'm a New York-based actor. And they had the reaction that you could imagine. Like, they looked at me like I was a pirate. They looked at me like I had a parrot on my shoulder. They're like, their notes were like, why? So it was like I fell on my face. Couldn't have gone. Maybe it could have gone worse, but I highly doubt it. And another thing was going to the interview. Like, so I was staying at some like extended stay suites or whatever, and I had this little rental car. And of course, I'm like all nervous to get there. And there's no GPS back then. So remember, like paper direct, I'm like, oh, I gotta drive and turn. So I'm like, Palo Alto is like all these winding roads through the hills and things, and so my mind's like on that, and I had this portfolio, and there's like NDA things that I had to sign, like whatever you see, you can't talk about, non-disclosure agreements, and then all these other things. And so I have this in this little kind of dossier, or kind of folder, and I'm getting ready to go, and I throw my duffel bag in the trunk because I'm going to go straight to the airport from there. I was going to have lunch with Rick right afterwards, but of course he was with his family. So after the interview, I was just going to go to the airport. So I'm packed up to go. And I get to the parking lot for the interview, and this dossier I'm supposed to have with all this paperwork that I'm supposed to fill out,
the car.
I left it on the roof of the car. And I'm in the suit, sweating like I jumped into a pool with my clothes on, looking under the seats, like maybe it isn't here. And I'm freaking out. Like, will they even see me? Like, will they even can I even be in the building if
Wow.
it's kind of so I walked in, and that was my first impression was, I don't know what happened to people. They're like, oh, yeah, okay, and they still let me in,
You
and
never
so
once thought I sent it out to the universe.
not at the time. No, I didn't. That wasn't the vibe at the time.
And that was like the catalyst that got you into working with Tesla. And were you hired at that meeting?
No, they told me where I could go.
Really?
But no, so basically, I followed up with Rick after the grieving process and stuff, that so like a couple weeks later, he was like, we compared notes. He's like, yeah, look, sounds like they didn't really get you, and I was like, yeah, yeah. And he said, hey, well, listen, we're building all these programs from the ground up, and we're going to need, people like you. So let's keep in touch. And Rick and I kept in touch. My original interview was fall of 2010, and I was hired summer of 2012. So we kept in touch for 2 years. And I remember they called, we started contact again in like May was like the initial calls. And it was so funny because I was doing Xanadu in Michigan at that time. And so, they kind of arbitrarily say, hey David, hey, it's so and so from Tesla. Hey, what are you up to these days? And I was like, Xanadu. And like, oh, what is that?
Who knew?
I was like, it's a roller disco musical.
And how do you do?
Yeah, they're like, oh, okay, so they're like, hey, we're building all these programs. It was for the Model S launch program because the Model S had yet to come out. There before that, Tesla was a very niche player. In about 3 years, they built 2,500 cars in 3 years, which is very super super low volume. And then they were going to go to Model S, which was going to be a much higher volume, like 5,000 cars in a quarter. So 2 orders of magnitude growth. So, and they were building, all these programs that did not exist. So they said, we're looking for people that are kind of like hustlers and okay with ambiguity and pulling from all different kind of ranks of life, yeah, backgrounds, yeah. And then that was it. Rick got looped back in. It was this cool kind of cosmic full circle. And Brandon Wadley, I have to give a shout out to Brandon Wadley as well as at Tesla. He was instrumental. And then that's how I started with Tesla. And then at that point, there were about 3,000 people at Tesla. I think currently now they're like 140,000 or 130,000. So it's a dramatically different organization back then.
Still in Detroit at the time?
What's that?
Detroit or New York?
I was in New York. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely New York. I mean, I was doing a show in Michigan. That Xanadu, that show I was doing was actually at Meadowbrook Theater. This is completely coincidental. It was at Meadowbrook Theater, which is on the campus of Oakland University, which I did my freshman and sophomore year of college. I was actually an usher at that theater, and I was an usher so I could see free shows because, of course, I was broke as a joke. So I was like, oh, it's cool. I could see. I'll serve concessions and see people, and I could see free theater. I sat on the steps on the back of the theater. So it was this cool full circle moment where I went from being an usher, in 2000 or 1998 to in 2012 being a lead of the show. That was being on the stage. That's a completely different side story, but that was kind of a cosmic coincidence.
I mean, your story could go on for like hours and hours and hours and hours. Our listeners we commit to them like an hour, live it over an hour for their episodes. So there's so much more to hear from you, but I think it's important to tell our listener that in that summer of 2012, you started working with Tesla. You worked in a couple of different capacities and different roles. And tell us a little bit about what you're doing today in regards to like where you are today after all that experience.
Yeah. So I worked for Tesla from 2012 to 2019. So basically the summer of 2012 to the summer of 2019. And then I bowed out from Tesla and kind of corporate life in general. When I joined Tesla, it was very much a field job. So it's out in the field. It's out in the world. And by nobody's fault, it's kind of the needs of the time and the needs of the day and the needs of the business. My job became very much a back office job where I was kind of the way Tesla works very much so is it was kind of like they're like, hey, this needs to be done. And whoever was standing around, they'd be like, you'll do it. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. Because that was what needed to be done. And so, but so the job, and I love the company, and as you know, I love the company dearly. But the why I joined Tesla was no longer, that role no longer existed anymore. And I felt that, well, anyone could do this job, anyone with a pulse could do this. So I said, well, how do I want to spend my days, and how can I if I have a choice? And I did. So much like, you could have a 10 out of 10 day. I was like, well, if you have the luxury to optimize for a 10 out of 10 day, how would you do that? And my answer was, well, I wouldn't commute 130 miles a day. One, I wouldn't sit in an office with no windows. Two, I wouldn't be doing a lot of paperwork. These are all very important things, but it's things that I could opt out of.
It's funny, but your first choices were things that you would not do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. It was basically like, you know, I am hyper aware of my own mortality. And I think that's when you talk about a 10 out of 10 day. Liz and I were just talking about this today in showbiz. The thing with showbiz is when you do a show, you never know how many shows you have left after. When I did Xanadu, I had no idea that was my swan song. I had no idea that was the last time, maybe ever, that I'm on stage. I didn't know.
Your last show was always your last show.
Correct. And that's the way life is. You don't know how many days you have left. Wouldn't it be cosmically tragic if your last day wasn't 10 out of 10, was mediocre? And it's kind of like the last scene. It's so brilliant. The last scene in Arthur Miller's Our Town, the play. If whoever's listening to this, and you too, if you haven't, read the last scene. I don't want to give anything away, but this girl is dead, and she's given the chance to relive one day, and it's the most arbitrary day that you can imagine. Nothing special happens, and she holds on to every moment. It's to her, it's the most glorious thing. And I get choked to think about it. So, but and I'm acutely aware of that. So so that was it. That was the choice. I was like, so to answer your question, so much of my life when you're an actor, you're always hustling. You're always trying to get the next gig. You're always trying to win people over. You're always trying to have people realize your value and have opportunities for your own expression and things like that, and build a resume and build this momentum and all these things. Tesla, the same thing. I had to prove to the world that this was a viable company, and I had to make it viable. And it was blood, sweat, and tears every day. And it was action, action, action. And how can we be more efficient with our action? And how can we leverage our action? And it was all about action and doing. And much like retirees, which I don't consider myself retired, but if on paper I'm retired, there's a transition from living a life of doing to living a life of being. And it's really interesting to switch those gears and just be and appreciate. So right now, what I take pride, I used to take pride in my work, and I used to take pride in, and I still, if I worked again, I would take pride in it. But right now, I take pride in making my daughter laugh, and I take pride in making my wife laugh, and I take pride in making my friends laugh. I take pride in just volunteer, like Jaime, just like volunteering, like where people say, "Oh, thanks, that was really helpful." It's not in like how much can I make money? That's cool too. Like if I made money, that's cool too. But as Zig said, people that tell you that money isn't important will lie to you about other things too. Money's definitely important, but it's just like Liz and I had this conversation, like when we're in showbiz, you had to go where the job is. So the job's in Michigan. Guess what? You're going to Michigan for X amount of time. If the show's on the road, hey, packing your bags, see your family. I gotta go on the road. Why? Because God put food on the table. An interesting thing happens when you don't need to do it. Like a cool job will come up. Like let's say a cool job comes up in Michigan for me, but it's like, but then I'll see less of Eleanor. I'll see less of Liz. And oh, well, maybe I won't do it. And I actually had a conversation with my cousin-in-law, who's this amazing, he's an actor in New York. He's huge, Ross, he's a hugely talented guy. Ross Alden is his name. And he's this very spiritual guy. And he goes, Dave, there's two kinds of currency. There's monetary currency, and then there's soul currency. So I was like, yeah, maybe you don't need to do it for monetary, but he's like, you need to pay your soul. So that's kind of how I view things now. Like, well, maybe I just have to do it because it's the right thing to do. So it's a weird place to be at. I haven't totally figured it out, to be honest. To be honest,
yeah, but
like
I'm sure getting involved early on with Tesla, stock wise, whatever, it has gotten you to the point you're at now. If you make more choices on your own.
Well, and that's exactly why I'm in this position, and it's a very interesting position. And 2 years ago, I didn't. Well, let's see. 4 years ago, I didn't know I'd be in it. So it's this kind of transitional. I'm in this kind of transitional period, and I'm just trying to. I never wanted to be in a place where, and I think people can fall in this trap where, like, oh, if only this and this and this would happen, then I'll be happy. That kind of like waiting for life to start. I never want to fall in that trap. So right now I'm like, okay, I'm not hustling and bustling and doing the big contracts and stuff. And that is okay. I'm not waiting for that. I have to enjoy this cup of coffee and enjoy, Eleanor's practicing her piano, like that. It's very interesting because I think particularly in Western culture, we're it's the success is how much can you get it, and
But I'm sure there's still, based upon your nature, there's still probably a part of you that misses some of the action, some of the activity.
correct.
That's why we get him to dress up as the school mascot. That's why we get him
Yeah.
He does
in
that?
the corner. Yeah, we fulfill those needs for him at any moment in time. He's going to do a school musical, hopefully. That's what we get him all tied in.
Yeah. Well, and you're exactly right. There is this thing of like, do I have one more in me? Do I have one more big gig, whatever that is? And I'd like to think yes.
I see a family show being written and the three of you starring in it, because the entire family, I mean, he posts video of his daughter singing when she was like 3, and she's amazing even now. But like at the age of 3, I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's just the DNA between Liz and Dave is incredible. Yeah,
that's all.
They're amazing.
I'm convinced that years ago when you rousted from that couch and walked out to the deck and you saw those headlights, you were anointed for many more years of success and longitude. So don't worry about your mortality. It'll take care of itself. Come on.
We are so grateful that you took time to talk with us today. And I know part of your story, but learning more about it today was just amazing. And I love that we were able to share it with our listeners as well, too. So thank you.
If you get bored, call us back for some more of that stuff, okay?
Oh, I can go for hours. I won't put any of your listeners through it. So it's good that you're cutting in.
We're developing a cure for insomnia tapes. Maybe we'll record you and put them on.
You've been talking to my wife. I started talking about Tesla. She's snoring in 5 minutes.
We appreciate you so much. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being you. And thank you for putting that 10 energy in the universe, because we need it.
Ditto.
We'll see you when we see you.
Great. See you at Halloween.
Well, this is airing after that. So folks, Dave was... But yeah, you know what I mean. All right. Thanks, Dave.
It was great seeing you at Halloween.
Yes, it was so good.
That's showbiz, baby.
2026.
All right. But the rest, we're connected forever. So, all right. Good to see you, buddy. See you later. Bye. Bye. Wow.
We're still on?
We're still recording.
Hold on. Oh, no. Interesting guy.
I mean, like, amazing. And just when he talks about being a 10, he literally is. Like, every time you're in his presence, you just feel the most. And, like, we talked to Jeremy a few months back, and his energy was super contagious. But both of them different type of energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Type of, and just incredible.
Well, he was a journeyman actor, worked extremely hard, but he had the attitude, even the old Zig Ziglar stuff, which was kind of subliminal stuff to go forward and stuff.
Yeah.
But getting involved with a company such as Tesla and getting in early with stock, and that gives you this. When you take away the monetary obligation of life, opens up all kinds of other challenges.
What was that Zig weather quote that he said? I loved it. Like, don't judge your attitude on the weather.
Don't judge the day by the weather.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we saw Zig. Zig came to town once.
I know. I was with you at the bit. Like, it was a big convention. You have to put it together. Amazing. Well,
attitude controls your altitude.
Yes. Is that Zig as well too?
I just made it up.
No, you did not. That is like out there.
Yeah, but he can't. He's not here anymore.
Hey, do you know why they call them pirates?
Pirates.
No. Because they.
Did I walk into that or what?
All right, folks. We appreciate you listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Leave comments. We'll share with you how you can connect with Dave. He's got a great, he writes lots of articles about different car stuff. That's really the technical way to say it. Amazing human.
This is not an AI screen. We're not in two separate rooms. See? Ooh.
Listener, you didn't see it. I smacked my dad in the head. Oh, you okay?
I bruised.
Okay, we're going to go before I get arrested for parent abuse. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you next week for another episode of What's Your Story?
Watch out for the UFOs, baby.
Ay, ay, ay.
Hey, thank you for tuning into today's What's Your Story podcast.
To learn more or share your story, go to jamiemarco.com. That's www.jaimemarco.com. And we will see you next time.